laudatio, but first, Steve Schwartzman.
Good evening, and I'm glad you all finally had some dinner. Congratulations. Tonight I have the privilege to introduce the recipient of this year's World Statesman Award, and someone I have the honor to call a friend, Mario Draghi. There is no one more deserving of this award. Mario is, without question, one of the most accomplished statesmen and public servants of our era. His stewardship of the European Central Bank saved the euro from collapse. His service as Prime Minister of Italy, a post he did not seek, almost unique for a politician, inspired renewed global confidence in Italy and its future. Mario was the first Italian to receive a PhD from MIT, where I am very involved and personally committed through the Schwarzman College of Computing. He started his career as a professor of economics and also worked for the World Bank before being recruited by the Italian government to serve as Director General of the Italian Treasury. Later, he served as Governor of the Bank of Italy, before eventually being called on to head the European Central Bank. One thing that many people don't know is that he also worked at Goldman Sachs, where he was a vice chairman and member of the firm's management committee. During his time there, he partnered with senior management on the firm's European strategy, drove engagement with major European clients and governments, and helped develop and expand business globally. He's often told me that he deeply enjoyed those roles too. As you can see from these few examples, the breadth and level of excellence that defines Mario's career is stunning. He is truly a man for all seasons, and apparently for all occupations. As Mario embarks on his next chapter, I have no doubt there is much more to come. Now, before I turn it over, I want to introduce Henry Kissinger, who is perhaps the most extraordinary figure in foreign policy in our lifetime. How do you introduce someone who's 99 years old? Most 99-year-olds, and there aren't many of them, are at home asleep already after ordering a blue plate special and maybe watching some television. Henry is still writing books. He's still giving talks. He was active on the internet with Zooms all during the pandemic, reaching people all over the world. When we all used to go places, which we're starting to, I would go to China, and no matter where I went, Henry would already be there. He has more energy, more stamina, more tenacity, and more brilliance than almost anyone I know. In fact, he is unique, as everyone knows. He's written or co-written 19 books. The writing style is elegant, and the perceptions are right on the mark. They're fun to read, even though they're all about politics and leadership. There is no word that really captures the superlative position of Henry in the world. He's more important than many chief executive officers and presidents of countries. He works behind the scenes. Everybody likes to talk to Henry. Everybody learns something that they didn't know or see it in a different way. So it's my pleasure to introduce Henry Kissinger. Henry, you're on.
If not for his dedication as a bridge builder and dedication to the goals of the Appeal of Conscience Foundation, you would have gotten a video Zoom message that said, "No, I am coming, I am coming," particularly because our world statesman who follows in your footsteps. And all we pray, please God, next year will be your 100th birthday, and we're going to have a great celebration with Nancy on your side. And all of you say amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have attended, I think, 20 of these events. I cannot speak as I did on previous occasions because I twisted a ligament a few days ago, so I ask you to forgive me if I speak from my seat. I have known Mr. Draghi, our honoree, since we shared a plane on a common friend who did not serve food on his planes. But knowing him, knowing that friend, I had brought some sandwiches which I shared with Mr. Draghi. And our friendship goes back many decades to that point when we shared a common airplane. And I have had enormous respect for Mr. Draghi over these years, over these decades. He has had an extraordinary capacity for intellectual analysis. And for an intellectual analysis of issues that were focused on the common good and not just on an immediate point. He became Prime Minister, at a moment where the president of the country decided that he needed a leader who was above the parties, but whom the parties nevertheless respected, and where he could be sure that whatever proposals Prime Minister Draghi would make to him would be based on an analysis of the common good and of the national purpose. So he was symbolic for a challenge of our generation. The challenges that we have an enormous amount, we as a society, of technical competence, but not necessarily are able to give it a focus on what a common future would represent. And so, an important crisis, first in economics, with the economic crisis at the turn of the century. And then in the crisis that we now have about the future of peace and progress in the world, in various elevated positions. As General Director of the Treasury, as head of the European economic structure, and then as Prime Minister of Italy. With Mario Draghi was called upon to do extraordinarily complicated tasks, because it was believed, and it turned out to be correct, that he would analyze the issues, that he would not approach them from a partisan basis, and therefore, over the decades, whenever Mario Draghi retired from one of these positions, it was an interval and never a permanent withdrawal. And in our period, executives have to decide how to take their country or the unit they govern from where they are to where they've never been. So what is needed is high technical knowledge, but beyond that, courage and vision. courage because leaders have to move on paths that are not yet familiar, but are necessary, and vision to deal with the relationship of what is developing with the necessities of the individual. So the world right now has achieved a technology inconceivable even a generation ago. But its definition of purpose has not kept pace with the capacities that had been developed. So as we look around the world, we see the United States and China in almost weekly verbal conflict. And the danger is that when this becomes built into the thinking of each side, some accident can happen, some incident that then is interpreted by the hostility that has been built up. So China and the United States have a need for a kind of dialogue, not just for the immediate issues of the moment, but also the evolution of the future. And we look at the Ukrainian crisis, and we welcome the effort of the Ukrainian people to maintain their independence and their freedom. But we also need to consider what happens after victory and what the relationship will be between Europe, a liberated Ukraine, and Russia as a historic entity. And in the Middle East, the issue of nuclear weapons and the spread of nuclear weapons overhangs so many of the tensions, and it's the cause of so many of the tensions. So it is a great privilege for me to speak here for a man who I believe has a unique capacity to analyze the situations and to contribute to their solution. And he can make that contribution sometimes in government and sometimes as an advisor. But his record makes clear that he has the analytical ability and the courage and the vision that he will be with us for a long time in this constructive role, and I will watch him, and he will go beyond the period that has been granted to me. And it is therefore my great privilege to participate in giving this award this evening. And I want to thank the previous speakers for the generous remarks they have made and for their expression of faith in our honoree. So thank you, Rabbi Schneier, for giving me this opportunity. And I thank my old friend who made the initial remarks for this occasion. And I wish you all the best. Mario Draghi.
Henry, it's now on the record. Henry Kissinger is for Mario Draghi. Is that correct? Henry, you are for Mario Draghi. And you're not interfering in the Italian politics. Okay. Thank you, Steve Schwartzman, for that wonderful introduction. Henry, again, we have a date, please, God, for your 100, right here. No, it's going to be in a much larger room, a big celebration, in good health, and use a brilliant mind of yours in the service not only of our country, dialogue, reconciliation, end of conflict. I'd ask the Prime Minister please step forward. It's the globe. And you understand the world. Because not only are you gifted with wisdom and heart, but you are a strong defender, not only of your country, European Union, relationship with the United States, dedicated to humanity as a whole. So you see, all the religious leaders here will say a blessings for you, your wife, your 2 children, your grandchildren, and we look forward for you to continue to be the stability that Italy needs. Okay? The stability that Italy needs. Okay. Brian? Henry, we're going to come around to you because, or can we do it with Dr. Kissinger afterwards? Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Steve? Brian, come closer. Here, hold it with me. Brian?
Right. Rabbi Schneier, Your Eminence Cardinal Parolin, Your Eminence Archbishop Elpidoforos, Dr. Kissinger, Mr. Schwartzman, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Well, before I start, I should say that I'm really moved. I'm moved by all this being said tonight, this fantastic evening, your warmth, your applause, the words of Rabbi Schneier, the words of Steve Schwartzman, but I should say especially the words of Dr. Kissinger. I should say I'm really moved by the fact that you took the time to come here on this occasion and say what you said. But just the very fact that you are here tonight is a gift, an enormous present to me. Thank you. Yes, our friendship started, was exactly 30 years ago on that plane. And then somehow grew throughout the years, even though we've been seeing each other quite sparsely. But of recent, with the events that have been happening over the last 12 months, we had the opportunity to have especially one deep conversation about what was happening. And that was just after a month of war, I would say, and what to do now and what to do next, and how should we approach these autocracies. And I'll say something about that tonight, too. I'm deeply grateful to receive this award, and I would like to thank again Rabbi Schneier and the Appeal of Conscience Foundation and all of you for this honor. You have awarded this prize to many great stateswomen and statesmen before me, and it's truly humbling to be in their company. I would like to pay tribute to the late Shinzo Abe, who stood on this stage last year. Abe was a strong believer in Japan's duty to contribute to global stability. He acted forcefully to reinvigorate the Japanese economy through a combination of policies which they were called Abeconomics, Abecomics or something. It was monetary policy, supply-side reforms, fiscal policies. His life was, as we know, tragically cut short, but his legacy lives on among the people of Japan and beyond. The importance of dialogue, which we celebrate tonight, has been squarely at the center of my professional life as an economist and as a policymaker. The value of a successful partnership between multilateral bodies and local institutions was one of the main lessons I learned while working at the World Bank in the 80s. Rewriting the rules of global finance, as we did on the Financial Stability Board in the wake of the 2008 crisis, required mutual trust, open-mindedness, and the ability to compromise. The European project, which has granted peace and stability in Europe after centuries of conflicts, hinges on the strength of shared institutions such as the European Central Bank. The G20, which Italy presided over last year, confirmed that only global cooperation can help to solve global problems, from the pandemic to climate change. The potential for mutual understanding to be a force for good is larger the more integrated is our world. To be successful for everyone, and especially the most vulnerable, globalization demands a joint set of rules. And yet, today, we face a significant challenge to the idea that we can work together for the benefit of all countries. Russia's invasion of Ukraine risks ushering in a new age of polarization, one we have not seen since the end of the Cold War. The question on how we deal with autocracies will define our ability to shape our common future for many years to come. The solution lies in a combination of frankness, coherence, and engagement. We must be clear and vocal about the founding values of our societies. I'm referring to our belief in democracy and the rule of law, our respect for human rights, our commitment to global solidarity. These ideals should guide our foreign policy in a clear and predictable, and I underline predictable, manner. When we draw a red line, we must enforce it. When we make a pledge, we must honor it. Autocracies thrive on exploiting our hesitancy. We should avoid ambiguity, not to regret it later. Finally, we must be willing to cooperate, so long as it doesn't mean compromising on our core principles. This week marks the 77th United Nations General Assembly. I hope there will be a future when Russia decides to return to the very norms it subscribed in 1945. For all the gloominess of the times we live in, I remain, well, cautiously or not, optimistic about the future. The heroism of Ukraine, of President Zelensky, and of his people is a powerful reminder of what we stand for, or what we stand to lose. The European Union and the G7, together with our allies, have remained firm and united in support of Ukraine in spite of Moscow's attempts to divide us. Our collective quest for peace continues, as shown by the deal to unblock millions of tons of cereals from the ports of the Black Sea. Only Ukraine can decide which peace is acceptable. But we must do all we can to favor an agreement when it finally becomes possible. In a divided world, the role of religious leaders and of the institutions you lead is essential. For all your differences, you champion peace, solidarity, human dignity. Your knowledge, your wisdom, and your faith can guide us and help us heal. You can reach across borders, speak to our collective conscience and to the soul of individuals. You can show the way forward through dialogue, build new bridges when old ones have collapsed, and you can hold us to account. As I was reminded during my recent visit to Yad Vashem, indifference is the worst foe of humanity. Speaking out is not only a moral obligation, it's a civic duty. To those who demand silence, submission, and obedience, we must oppose the power of words and, if need be, of deeds. Today, the world needs courage, clarity, but also hope and love. Thank you.
I would remain standing because I'm just going to ask you to please rise now for the benediction by His Eminence Archbishop Elpidophoros of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America.
My beloved friend, Chief Rabbi Arthur Schneier, distinguished honorees, friends of the Appeal of Conscience Foundation, let us close our fellowship this evening with a prayer, including a silent and respectful remembrance of the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, last year's World Statesman Awardee, who was cruelly and all too soon taken from us. Please bow your heads with me for a moment. O Creator of heaven and earth, we offer our praise and thanks for those who bear witness for truth, for righteousness, and for the mutual respect that the Appeal of Conscience Foundation manifests to the world. We ask your special blessings upon our mentor, our friend, and the founder, our beloved Rabbi Arthur Schneier. We also ask divine blessings upon those honored this year, His Excellency Mario Draghi, Jean-Paul Agon, and Robert Kraft, for all their contributions to peace of the world and the good state of the human family. God of the universe, we beseech you to make our hearts firm, to ever protect the religious liberty, basic rights, and God-given dignity of every human being. May the principles of the Appeal of Conscience Foundation keep us grounded in your ways, strengthened in your righteousness, and always committed to compassion for every living being. Amen. Thank you.
Yes.
Let us say thank you to Alina Cho, CBS reporter. But above all, I want to acknowledge Brian, you and your entire team, Karen Tresback, you and the entire team, David Greenberg. And what's great about the conclusion of this evening, we walk away from here that every conflict comes to an end. I believe in that. Every conflict comes to an end. That's why we had Prime Minister Abe with us. Remember? Japan, United States fighting. So dialogue, reconciliation, and hope. And I got inspired by my beloved wife, Elizabeth, who always gives me the strength of planning ahead and for the future. Behind every man, there's a good woman. Anyhow, Alina, thank you. Could you just go ahead?
I'd like you to just remain standing for a couple of more minutes as we let our 2022 World Statesman, Prime Minister Draghi, the Italian delegation, and Dr. Henry Kissinger step off the dais.
You know what? You missed Henry's 99th